Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity, here with another revisited video. This time I'm going to revisit my review for the Doomsday Machine, episode 6 of season 2 of the original series. So I had originally recorded my review for the Doomsday Machine, or uploaded it, shall I say, on September 18th, 2017, which YouTube is telling me 5 years ago. It's like 5.5, maybe, but yeah, probably closer to 5 than 6 years ago. So yeah, doing these, at first I would make a big deal about, oh my god, this is an older video, but now I've actually gotten through a couple old ones, like from 7 years ago, and so now 5 years ago doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It was when I was still using that music that apparently everyone hated, which I think is fine, the bassline intro music, and it was when I was still doing all pictures. So this video is one of the all pictures ones that CBS left alone, but soon after they started taking down a lot of them or demonetizing them, and so that's why you see my pretty face for all my original series reviews with just little snippets of pictures now. But this one they left alone. Go figure, I don't know. And Doomsday Machine. So I don't really have much to add, to be honest. Even though this review was 5 years ago, I was pretty thorough in covering everything that I wanted to cover. And honestly, I don't think there is much to this episode. Not to say it's not a good episode. Of course, it's a really good one. It's a classic, and I do really like it because it's exciting. And that's the one thing I think is really masterful at. And it may be the best Trek episode, actually. I'm trying to think of another one. Maybe The Changeling? But a lot of people think The Changeling is boring, but I think Changeling is different. It's more intense. There's just more silent tension throughout this episode, where this one's more exciting. It like builds, and you get moments of like nail biting or sitting on the edge of your seat, whatever. And I think it's really good at that. The way it builds tension, and tension builds, and yeah. On top of each other. First, they encounter the Constellation ship, which is falling apart. They meet Matt Decker, who clearly has PTSD, but then Matt Decker takes control of the Enterprise and tries to destroy it, so there's tension there. Then Matt Decker commits suicide, and so there's tension there. And then the final bit at the end of the episode is with the most tension filled, where Kirk goes to execute his plan to destroy the Constellation within the Planet Killer in order to destroy the Planet Killer. But he's reliant on the transporter to beam him away in the nick of time, but the transporter chooses that time to malfunction. You see smoke blowing out of it. You see Scotty working hard to repair it, and Kirk's like, now would be a good time to beam me out. Like, that was probably one of the most suspenseful, tension-filled moments in the entire original series, and so I think the whole episode, the way it's structured, is structured very well. Now, a few things I'll just reiterate, because I did actually already talk about them in my review. Nitpick I have about a contrived moment where Spock refuses to relieve Commodore Decker from duty, where I think he should have anyway. In fact, as soon as Kirk gets to get him on a communicator, he's like, relieve Decker of duty. That's the direct order, and Decker's like, you have no regulation, like you have no authority to relieve me of duty, and Kirk's just like, blast regulation, do it, which is, as Spock showed some cojones, that's what he should have done too. But more than that, I actually think it wouldn't defy regulations, and this is where the contrived thing comes in, because when he said, and I'm sure I mentioned this in my review, but when he says to McCoy, you can relieve him under medical grounds, and McCoy's like, I'll do that right now. And then Spock is like, well, you will be asked to back this up, and you don't have any credible things to examine, so it will fall apart. Which is actually not true, because he could actually ask for Decker to be examined immediately. They could temporarily relieve him of command under suspicion of of psychological issues, and then he could go examine to prove or disprove. And now if his examination doesn't hold up, then yeah, by regulations they would have to put him back in command. But we know that he's suffering from PTSD, and it's very fucking obvious to anyone with eyes that he's suffering from PTSD and not fit to be in command. And so his medical examination most certainly would hold up. So yeah, they should have relieved him anyway. But then, of course, you wouldn't get this whole sequence when Decker almost destroyed the whole damn ship. And God, I didn't look. I was trying to look up that fight scene that Decker was in with that ensign who was escorting him to the security office, and he ended up beating, and they had this whole fight scene. I reckon I would have bet you anything that actor was actually a stunt guy. They just had the stunt guy do the fight, because why not? He doesn't have any lines, so why get an actor? Just get a stunt guy to do it. But that's, that would just make sense to me, but I didn't actually find any information on that. But yeah, so the whole thing with Decker, and I also talked about how Decker, the actor who played them, did a very over-the-top, overacting performance that's not very good, and I got pushback on this, and I think I've already addressed this pushback in a different video, because the actor himself said that he thought he did a bad job. Because he said that he really regretted his performance because he wasn't taking Star Trek seriously. He was treating it as a cartoon. He said as something just silly, so he purposely was doing an over-the-top performance. And absolutely, you can tell. Just the way he was like when he was talking about the ship being destroyed, he was like, it was destroyed! It was just way over the top, and it could have been better. And I gotten pushback saying, well, he was traumatized, suffering from PTSD. But yeah, you're not over dramatic like that when you're suffering from that, or typically not. It's just a bad performance, and I think, and the actor agrees. It's not that he's a bad actor; it's that he wasn't taking it seriously enough. It's exactly what he said, that he thought it was more like a cartoon. And after seeing the finished product and seeing how good it was and seeing how serious it was, he felt bad that he should have taken it more seriously, which is a fair mistake to make because Star Trek wasn't really established. It's only just starting its second season. It's not that popular of a show. It's easy to make that mistake as an actor, but once he realized it, he was like, shit, this is actually really good, and I should have taken it more seriously and did a better job. And that still holds true. His performance, I mean, there are moments where it's good when it's pulled back a bit, but for the most part, it's just way over the top. Way over the top. Now, another interesting thing is there was a parallel I just found to Captain Jellicoe from Chain of Command, which makes sense because, like Admiral or Commodore Decker, did I call him Admiral? I always get Admiral Commodore. Anyway, like Commodore Decker, Captain Jellicoe is also a very bad captain. I'm sorry, he's a bad captain. Never gonna stop saying that. Anyway, but there's a parallel to him because there was a line that was cut from the script of this episode where, Commodore Decker told McCoy he may leave the bridge after McCoy kept trying to get him removed from duty and failed. And McCoy, the line that was cut is McCoy was going to say, oh, go to sickbay and wait for the casualties you're about to send me. And they actually gave that line to Dr. Crusher in Chain of Command Part 2, where she said that to Captain Jellicoe. She's like, and when he was like, Dr. Crusher, I want you to, and she interrupted, like, prepare sickbay for all the casualties you're about to send me. He's like, that's right. What a terrible captain. He's such a bad captain. But anyway, Commodore Decker can be excused, at least in this episode, for suffering PTSD. But again, that's where Spock and McCoy, they're the ones at fault, because it's obvious with anyone, especially a trained medical professional like McCoy, could clearly see he's suffering from PTSD and that he's traumatized. And so, yeah, under regulation, most certainly he could temporarily remove him of command until he has an examination. Abso-fucking-lutely. And even Kirk is like, didn't give a shit about regulations. Like, I don't care, blast regulation, take him out immediately. Which is, Spock should have shown some more initiative. Anyway, and no one, you could tell, and this is another way why it was shot very well, because you could tell that Sulu and the other people there didn't really like taking orders. I mean, obviously because Commodore Decker was putting all their lives at risk, and they all knew it. But yeah, did like the shuttlecraft sacrifice and how that led to Kirk's great idea. Now, another thing about Decker is, and this is something I've known for a while, but I didn't mention it in my review, is that he's actually meant to be, I think his name is William. They just love that name, William. But but Commander Decker, who appears in Star Trek The Motion Picture, is meant to be Commodore Decker's son. And they mentioned that in the novelization format. I think Gene Roddenberry also confirmed that was the original intention, but they never mentioned it in the film. But that is an interesting bit of... I think that would have been interesting to bring up in the movie itself, since Decker and Kirk were having so much conflict, that they could mention the fact that, oh, you were there when my dad killed himself. I don't know. But that was a interesting bit of forward continuity. And then the Planet Killer itself, again, I kind of mentioned this in my review briefly about how they've seen, and I noticed this one on this recent rewatch as well, that they're very, like, the prototype or the earlier version of the Borg, or what gave the scriptwriters of TNG the idea of the Borg, they were probably basing off of this very, very loosely, and by this I just mean the very basic concept, because the Planet Killer itself is nothing like the Borg, but how it's used dramatically and plot wise within Star Trek is similar. So what I mean by that is, in this episode, the Planet Killer is this unstoppable force, and the ships keep firing phasers at it, and it does nothing, and is about to destroy a whole bunch of Federation planets and kill a bunch of other people, and it seems like it is completely unstoppable, and to try to stop it would be suicide. And so it gives this really strong tension of what, and a good character story too, about how the characters face a no-win scenario and something that is unbeatable and unstoppable, but then they find that little loophole that allows them to beat them, which is exactly how I think the Borg was used in Best of Both Worlds, that they're just unstoppable. The stakes were a bit higher, though, because they were talking about completely annihilating the entire Federation. I don't know if they came up with the term assimilate yet. I mean, they had Picard assimilated into the Borg, but I don't they hadn't come up with that being their regular trait. That was sort of retconned in later. I think at this stage, especially the Q-Who stage, they were just meant to kill everyone and steal their technology. But regardless, it doesn't matter. Point is, the whole Federation was at risk of being wiped out from this unstoppable force. No matter what they do, the phasers, whatever, they can't defeat it. So it has the character stories of them butting up against an unstoppable, unbeatable force. And so, as I said, the very basic concept. In terms, so it's not in any way, shape, or form a rip-off or a copy. It's just a very, very basic narrative function that the Planet Killer machine served, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that too. Actually, that's a really good idea, and it worked really well for them. Doomsday Machine was a popular episode, so it made sense for them to say what made that episode so popular and so good. What narrative function worked to do that, and can we duplicate that in TNG? And yes they did, and it worked. So yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Speaking of the popularity of this episode, James Doohan mentioned that this was his favorite episode. of the original series several times. But DC Fontana mentioned this as her least favorite episode of the original series. Now, I really don't understand how that works. With the original series, with some really, really terrible episodes, like, everyone mentions Spock's brain, even though I don't think it's that bad. But then you got Cat's Paw, Way to Eden. So many, Turnabout Intruder. What's that one with the Lincoln Savage Curtain? Like, you have so many really, really bad episodes. The Mud's Women. Sorry, but that's just me. You have so many terrible episodes, and you're gonna pick even if you don't like the Doomsday Machine, the worst episode, the least favorite. I don't know. She said least favorite, which is a bit different than worst. It's just her personal preference, so I can't, but it's still hard to buy, especially someone who actually worked on the show. It's like, really, you're gonna choose that as your least favorite? I don't know, but a lot of people put this in their top 10s, top 5s. It never made mine. Maybe it made my top 20, to be fair. But I never was as excited for this episode. Like, I would never name this as one of the best. It's like, what's your favorite original series episode? A lot of people just, Doomsday Machine. Oh, one thing that I always think about, I was going to reference whenever I don't know why, it's just a random thing, but there was the movie The Terminal that came out in the early 2000s. I think it was 2005, something like that, with Tom Hanks. And I remember seeing that movie in the theater and quite liking it, when most people didn't really care much for it, or either just forgot about it immediately, where the dude gets from another country gets stuck in the terminal because they won't let him go into the U.S. because this country doesn't technically exist anymore because there's a revolution there, blah, 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 blah. He's stuck in the airport, and I always remember when he was trying to, help this guy out. I think it was played by Diego Luna. And he has a crush on the character played by, what's her name? Zoe? No, I forgot her name. It's the one who, she's played a horror and the newer Star Trek reboot nonsense, and was in Guardians of the Galaxy. God, why am I blanking of her name? I'm gonna have to look this up now. But anyway, regardless, he had a crush on her, so he sent Tom Hanks to go find out more information about her so that he could woo her or whatever. And then Tom Hanks, of course, is playing this foreign guy who doesn't speak English very well, and he comes back and says stuff like Doomsday Machine, and kept listing up the Star Trek things. I always remember the Doomsday Machine as one of them, so I always think of it. And then Diego Luna's character is like, oh, she's a Trekkie, and that's how he's able to it's funny that she played a Trekkie before playing a horror, and able to sort of relate to her and know more about her, and know the fact that she's really into Star Trek. That's a nice little beat there, but it's interesting they specifically bring up Doomsday Machine. But anyway, I always think about that when I think about this episode. I don't know why, but I guess it tells you the popularity of this episode. So anyway, my original rating for the Doomsday Machine was a 9 out of 10. I kind of want to reduce that to an 8. I think I did the same thing with the mock time. It's a really good episode. Don't get me wrong. I do really like it. I don't think it's quite a 9, though. There's just not enough there for me. And Decker's over-the-top performance and that little contrivance bit that let the episode happen, that kind of brings it down a little bit for me. I still think it is probably still top 20 for me, to be fair. There's definitely an 8 rating would make my top 20 because there's not that many 9s and 10s in the original series. Sorry. So it's still top 20, but I don't think it's quite there for a 9. It is good, and I still really like it because it does build suspense and tension. And as I mentioned in my original review, the special edition, the added digital effects make this episode so much more watchable. I like really make it more watchable. I think that's why I gave it a 9. I was just so excited about the effects. But a strong 8. A high 8, if you want to call it. 8.5 if I did put such things, but I do not. But I'm going to give it an 8. That is my revised rating for the Doomsday Machine. So that's it for my revisited for the Doomsday Machine. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just didn't have that much to say about it. So now my computer's acting up. I gotta try to look up. It keeps acting up and pissing me off. But I'm trying to look at what the schedule is going to be next. And I can't find it. Okay, there we are. So where am I at right now? Doomsday Machine Revisited. So on Thursday will be the premiere of Picard. Season 3, episode 1. Saturday will be my review for Wolf in the Fold, and then I got 3 revisiteds coming up again next week. All my revisiteds for season 2 are all at the start of the season, and there's one at the end, but then the vast bulk of season 2 will have no revisit. It's like all lumped together at the beginning. I guess that's probably where the good and the bad episodes is, because one of my revisits is a terrible episode. So next Monday I do revisited for The Changeling, one of my favorite episodes, and then Wednesday do a revisited for The Apple, one of the worst episodes, and then on Saturday do a revisited for Mirror Mirror, of course, one of the best episodes. So all these revisits all lumped in at the start of season 2, and then no revisitors until the very end of season 2, but then I got a lot in season 3. For some reason, I just didn't cover season 2 that much. Maybe it's because I don't like season 2 that much. Or most of it's just mediocre, because season 3 has a lot of terrible episodes I want to cover. So maybe that's why I got more covered. But yeah. Anyway. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Thanks so much for your support and for watching this video. See you next time.